Well, to discuss this, I'm joined from Cambridge by Tunde Doherty. He's the Deputy Chairman of the UK chapter of Nigeria's ruling party, the All Progressives Congress. In Lagos, we have Tanwa Ashiru. She's the founder of the security and defense firm Bulwark Intelligence. And completing our panel, in London, we have political commentator and Nigerian affairs specialist Kayode Ogundamisi. And I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Just a heads up, there's a bit of a delay to Tanwa's studio in Lagos, so keep that in mind. There's about a 5-second delay when we get to her. Let me start with you, Kayode. Buhari wants a second term. Are you surprised?
Not surprised. You know, no one walks into the very powerful office of the Nigerian presidency and would not want to continue to rule in office, especially when they are guaranteed by the Constitution of the Federal Republic. Not a Buhari, not even when they are not performing well enough or they're just an average Nigerian president. Most people who've gotten into that position not only want to run for a second time, but they want to subvert the Constitution and have a third time in office. But I think this time around, Buhari will be running against his own records. He's not going to be running against the records of the former people in government. So not a surprising move from the president there.
Okay, so Tunde, it's one question to ask, has he done a good enough job in the first term to warrant wanting to run for a second term?
Definitely.
But there's a very basic question here, which is he well? Is the man healthy enough to serve for a second term? And what's the answer to that?
Definitely is well, strong, and is good to go for second time. He's done really a fantastic job. Since after he's recuperated from the from his health issues, he's gone back to Nigeria. It was fantastic. Things has moved on fantastically well, and definitely is good to go for the second time. I can tell you the president is energetic, strong enough for the second time.
Tunde, when we saw stocks in Lagos drop on the news that he wants to run for a second term, and they've sort of flatlined, right? The markets don't like the news. Does that bother you?
Definitely, it doesn't bother me a bit because the market will react to everything. So it's the usual thing for the market to react. But definitely the market will pick up because business, economy activities has improved better than what it used to be. With all the programs of the party, the program of President Buhari had really placed trust on investors about Nigeria, and definitely the stock is just reacting as normal to any news, and
okay.
I don't think that is of any consequential to the second time agenda.
Let's ask Tanwa Ashiru. Tanwa, has he done well enough economically, politically, and otherwise to warrant that second term? Is it going to be good news for Nigeria if he gets elected for a second term?
Well, one thing we know for sure is if he does get elected, Nigerians should expect more of the same that we've been getting. Quite frankly, the president came in on a platform of saying he was going to tackle corruption in the country, and which is extremely endemic, and that he was also going to tackle insecurity in the country. So if we even grade him just based on those two particular areas, right now it's not looking that great. In the area of corruption, we haven't had any high-level or high-profile indictments. Nobody has actually been indicted for massive corruption the way we thought it would happen. And then when it goes to the area of security, yes, I mean, there's been a few good things, which is at least some Chibok girls have been released. So we've seen some good in that area. And also Boko Haram has been contained to a specific region of the country as opposed to spreading out.
Okay,
but we've seen other issues.
Right, so let's take that, right?
We've seen issues of armed bandits killing across the country.
Sorry to interrupt you, and there is a delay, and I apologize for that. It's a technical issue, but let's tackle some of that, right? So you say, okay, he has had some limited success in containing Boko Haram, the release of some Chibok girls. If I look at corruption, and I look at the World Bank Doing Business report, it shows that Nigeria has had a rise, 24 spots, right? It shows that it's the results of some of the administration's reforms. That's what the World Bank says. So it shows that he's taking the country in the right direction. He's fighting corruption, isn't he?
Yeah, so that's what it looks like in theory, and that's what it looks like to the World Bank. But if you ask the average Nigerian, If you ask the average Nigerian, he would tell you that all he knows is at one point his 150 naira could at least get him $1. But today, that amount has doubled. So he has seen his expenses double without seeing his income double in the same aspect. So no, the ground here on the ground, people do not feel that the economy has gotten any better.
Kayode, who's closer to the truth, Tunde or Tanwa?
Tanwa is obviously closer to the truth. Tunde is describing an utopia, in my opinion. Right now, the president, of course, you can give it to the government. They are doing a lot of long-term investment in infrastructure in the country that's going to yield in long-term basis. But in short term, they've not invested enough in human capital development. The government has not really projected itself as a government that can multitask, where we've had security challenges in the north-central of the country. The president sometimes takes as much as 8 days to respond. The government has not projected itself as a government that is in tune with modern-day governance. And I think in that area, they've got a lot of deficiencies. And in 2019, the party it rules over, there's a lot of division. The party controls the National Assembly, which is the lawmaking organ of the government, but they've not been able to pass one serious anti-corruption legislation that would tackle corruption headlong. He promised to take care of the institutions of governments that would, like the judiciary. That has not been done. We've seen a lot of posturing, a lot of movement forward, but a lot of mass movement backward. It's going to be a very difficult one. Right now, it stands a chance, but if the opposition gets a grand coalition in place, the same way the APC did in the 2015 election, the president's seat might be out for the taking. Okay,
so let's ask Tunde then. Tunde, forget about Tanwa, forget about Kayode for a second. Listen to the ex-president, Obasanjo, who wrote that open letter. He said, don't stand for re-election. You're not well, you're too old, don't do it. Why isn't Buhari listening to the ex-president?
I don't think the expressions of the former president Obasanjo is really in tune with realities of things today. Because Obasanjo had his own time, he served his own 2 terms. Obasanjo was an head of state. And Obasanjo is, everybody has right to their own opinion, but definitely he is not the president. People believe probably he knows the presidency so well, but this in nitty-gritty, he does not know the status of the president. The president has never fall sick ever since he left the UK, and definitely he cannot begin to query a system that he ran for 8 years, and corruption within that 8 years triple.
Right. Okay, so let me. Okay, so let's park off Obasanjo, right?
Has been the handwork of the former president.
Okay, so we park off Obasanjo. You said he doesn't know the nitty-gritty, right? We forget about the president's health for a second. Let's look at some of the nitty-gritty. Let's look at Dabchi, where those 110 schoolgirls were abducted just a couple months ago by Boko Haram. We have Biafra possibly kicking off again. That's something to watch. We have the Fulani herdsmen and their clashes, and there's a problem there. And then we look at the economy. Nigeria slipping into recession in 2016, still struggling to recover, unemployment 19%. Put all of that on the table. Can you honestly say that it's been a rosy picture over the past few years?
I would say it's been a rosy picture, because if we say economic is sliding into recession, look at the global economy in itself. Okay. What's happening within the global economy must have effect on every other economy, right? Okay. And the president in himself, in his economic agenda, there are quite a lot of reform. Like Kayode has said, there are a lot of spendings on infrastructure, on long-term projects and all of that. These things are not going to materialize in one day, in 4 years. Some of the strength, some of the energy that the president is putting into the economy will, at the end of the day, yield a very strong future. Because if you look at it now, the effort the party has made, the effort the president has made, cannot just be taken for granted. Those people that are clamoring and are saying that, no, they don't want him for second time and all of this, you will see that all the loophole for free fund, for free money, had been blocked.
Okay,
so it is difficult for people to get free money.
So you're saying it's disingenuous.
So at the end of the day, these people are not happy. They are not happy with the government. They won't be happy with the president coming back. Okay,
so let me ask Tanwa Ashiru. Tanwa, be patient. It is a rosy picture. You're just not seeing the long-term fruits of it yet. It is rosy.
No, it's not a rosy picture. And, you know, anytime people ask, like, what is the issue with Nigeria? We can almost pretty much pinpoint it to one thing, and that is the education sector. What we see in terms of even human capacity, human resources, boils down to the education sector. Now, just since the president has been in power, we have seen the education sector tank. In essence, what does that mean? It means that in the next couple of years, you're going to have a whole generation of Nigerian children who grow up and who are pretty much unemployable. And how do you think that is going to affect even the economy or even security across the country? So you may say that you're investing in infrastructure, which will yield fruits in the future, but when you don't even have, in fact, half of the contractors that are building these infrastructure are not even local contractors. You have the Chinese that are building the airports across the country. And aside from the security implications of that, in essence, you know, surveillance or surveillance measures that could be taking place in that area. You're even looking at cases where we have multitudes, huge, vast numbers of unemployed youth in Nigeria who cannot even get those jobs to even act or serve as construction workers across the country. Okay. So, no, I just, you know, if we don't have a government right now that is focusing on education and focusing on the future of the children, we're really going to see the same thing over the next couple of years.
Tunde, the woman makes a good point, doesn't she?
That is totally wrong, because there are quite a lot of program of government that is centered on developing human capital. A lot of skill setting, skill incubations, a lot of diversification from the current academic scholars, and the need of the nation is being addressed. The need of the nation. Quite frankly,
you know, even the issue of what happened even in Dapchi,
the academic
even what happened in Dapchi with girls getting abducted.
Majority of the youth in Nigeria, it is not where you go to university that you can prosper or progress. It is the skill. Look at the Great Britain, for example. Majority of the industries we talked about are run through the skill.
No, we can't. You know, we can't keep comparing what's going on right now in Nigeria with Great Britain. We have a situation. Whereby girls were abducted in Chibok, and we had the exact same scenario of girls being abducted from schools. Again, in Yobe, the exact same thing.
I want you to compare.
And so, what are we saying here? I mean, it shows a government that hasn't focused in protecting education, in protecting even education in a restive area. It's not about a response time. In fact, the fact that it happened again the second time is a complete indictment on the government. It should never have occurred in the first place. And that's one thing we've seen over and over again, reaction. We're constantly reacting. People died, we don't hear anything from the presidency, and then people complain about it on social media, and then we see a reaction. It shouldn't be that way. We should be more proactive about these things. Protect education in the Northeast. If you think, you know what, someone told me the other day that about 20 years ago, we had a whole generation of children in that region of the country that stopped going to school. And now we have this whole generation of children that have grown up, uneducated, with nothing to do, addicted to drugs. I mean, come on. We need to focus where things should be right now. Tunde. And if the president cannot step up as a leader to lead us in the direction that we need to go, Nigerians need to make a good decision coming up.
Tunde?
Well, I think
I don't want to agree with Taba from our postulation. A lot is going on in terms of training, in terms of getting a student to education, because of the fact that they want to train the next generation of Nigeria and the next generation of leaders. There are programs put together to encourage these children to come to school.
Okay, like so Tunde, you believe enough is being done on education. Tanwa believes not
attracting huge
not nearly enough
coming to school.
Okay, fair enough. Kayode wants to come in. Kayode, come in.
Well, I think, you see, the problem we have in Nigeria is that all sides seem to be speaking the same thing. Well, Tunde is right, Tanwa is right, there's been investment in some areas. But the problem is that we identify these issues, we never prefer a solution. And that is the tragedy for the election that is coming in 2019. The Buhari government has actually been a very average government. It's not met the expectation of Nigerians. But we don't have even an alternative as we speak. The opposition party are not organized. They have not preferred any serious solution to the issues, challenges facing the country. Some people were actually hoping that Buhari will do something quite patriotic, that is, not run for his second term and bring a younger, vibrant person who would deliver on the promises he made during the 2015 election. The country is surely facing serious challenges, but don't take away the fact that the country is surviving and investors are actually coming in, not because of government, but in spite of government as a result of the strength of the private sector.
Tanwa, it's not Buhari's fault that the opposition's not organized, that they can't get their act together, that they don't have any charismatic candidates to put forward. So if the people want him, why not have him again for a second term?
You know, well, interestingly, democracy, as it is here in Nigeria, is very expensive. So we do have some people who have stepped up and said that they want to run for the upcoming elections, for presidency. And it gets so expensive, it's almost out of reach for them. You know, they don't have the same resources that, for instance, the sitting government has. And so that's kind of where the challenge is, number one. Number two, another thing, and this is why even the education thing is such a huge problem. You know, when you have a largely uneducated or a largely illiterate population, they don't even know their rights. They don't understand that within a democracy, the government works for you. And so if the government is not doing what they're supposed to do, you have the power to kick them out and get someone else in there. So a lot of Nigerians, the mass population, don't understand this concept. And so you had situations whereby there was a really bad fuel shortage that went on over the Christmas period. And you saw people on queues. And then when the president went into one of the states, they were in the queues, in the heat, suffering, waiting to get gas, and yet they were cheering him on. And so these are people, I mean, you almost want to ask them, do you not understand that they are partially responsible for that?
I think Tanwa underestimates the intelligence of the Nigerian electorate. The Nigerian electorate are quite conscious, and that was why they were able to change a sitting government like the PDP in 2015. We seem to underestimate that these people actually watch and look. In 2019, the situation is going to be different. In north-central Nigeria, where security challenges have not been addressed by this government, they're going to tilt their votes because they're going to make use of their PVC. But the point is, most of the people who we say are the new kids on the block, they're doing most of the talkings on social media rather than go on the streets. The traditional politicians are doing their politicking on the streets and the nooks and crannies of Nigeria. Those of us who want change will need to go to the streets and join them where the game is being played, rather than think that our voices in social media will make those changes in the country. Okay,
I'll let that be the final word. Lady and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having all of you on the Newsmakers. It's been fascinating discussing Buhari's future and Nigeria's future. Tanwa Ashiru, Tunde Doherty and Kayode Ogundamisi, thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers.